Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I had a subscriber ask a question which I thought was pretty good, and I guess it's worth addressing. He basically said, you're always talking about bodybuilding and people getting too lean in bodybuilding. What about powerlifting? What about all the powerlifters who get really, really fat? Great question, and I think that needs to be addressed as this is a fitness channel, and I have previously competed in powerlifting multiple times on camera here. Alright, so let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing. Do a little bit of crafting. This is more just busy work, but I can film while I work. And let's talk about it a little bit. So, good question. Well, what's the issue here? I'm not going to discount the health risk there. First of all, for people who want the cliff notes, and people forget, I'm not going to be defensive about powerlifting because I used to be a powerlifter. And that's one of the things I want to point out here too. When people say things like they're a bodybuilder or a powerlifter and they haven't competed in either one in several years, you're not a bodybuilder or a powerlifter anymore. Unless you're planning on going back into competing and have something on the schedule, you're not. That's like saying you're a football player because you used to play football games in a university or professional level, but you don't anymore. You're not on a team anymore. You're not a football player just because you play with a football. So, that being said, let's get that out of the way. I'm not considered a powerlifter anymore because I don't compete anymore. Probably not going to again. I have all my little medals up there and I'm done. So, the other thing that we need to factor in, the reason I don't bring it up as much, you don't see powerlifting being touted all over the internet, all over magazines, and all over YouTube as being the pinnacle of fitness. It's not promoted always as a fitness thing. Now, if you guys do, you got Johnny Candido in the fitness community here, but I don't think he necessarily even calls it that. And of course, Johnny's not getting really fat or really ripped for the most part. He stays at a healthy, athletic body fat. So we need to factor in the difference here. There's not like this big outcry telling people that being a power lifter is the pinnacle of being fit. And I'll be the first one to say that I know many powerlifters who compete at a serious level who love eating their bacon cheeseburgers every day and who don't do any cardio. They're against cardio. So that being said, would I say that they have a fitness lifestyle? No, of course not. Absolutely not. In fact, I have a friend, personal friend of mine, who I have competed with in the past, who uses what I would consider to be an excessive amount of drugs for the total he has and where he's at in competition. Very unhealthy drug stacks, in my opinion, both the doses and the mixtures. He loves bacon cheeseburgers. He never goes under 25% body fat, and he doesn't do cardio. So if you were to ask me, hey, is he fit? I'd be like, hell no. What he's doing should not be considered fit. It's not the pinnacle of fitness. If you have a strong deadlift, yes. Do I like him as a person? Yes. But I wouldn't take his lifestyle as a fitness-oriented lifestyle. And I think people need to understand the difference there also. A lot of these guys, just like any other sport, their competition takes priority over their health and fitness. You've got to differentiate those two. No competitive endeavor at a serious level is going to be particularly healthy. It might have health-oriented components. There might be aspects of it that could be considered part of a fit lifestyle, but nothing that is competitive or taken to any extreme is going to be healthy. People who run super marathons, they get injuries. They have issues from it. Powerlifting, you can get serious injuries from it because you're hitting true maximum lifts. It's not heavy weight that hurts people. It's insanely heavy weight that hurts people. Lifting a heavy weight that you can do for 5 reps with good form, if you have good muscle balance, is very, very rarely going to ever injure anyone. And I think people need to understand that difference. Heavy strength training is not the same as powerlifting. Just like training for body composition and hypertrophy is not bodybuilding. Training for hypertrophy and body composition can be very, very healthy. It can be part of a very fit lifestyle. Doesn't make you a bodybuilder because bodybuilding is inherently unhealthy. Like the bodybuilding lifestyle really has no place in the fitness world. It's the antithesis of fitness, and people confuse the two, and they assume that because they train to get at a lean, athletic body fat, and they train for muscle mass and strength, that they're a bodybuilder, and they're not. Bodybuilding is getting on the stage, getting as ripped as possible, depleting your body and posing in front of other people. That's bodybuilding. It's competitive endeavor. Powerlifting is training to have the highest possible squat, bench press, and max at your body weight in a weight class in a competition with judges and calibrated plates. All right, powerlifting is not something you're doing at your gym just to test your maxes every now and then. It's a competitive endeavor. And competitive endeavors are oftentimes not very healthy. Bodybuilding is inherently unhealthy as a competitive endeavor. Now, the other point that we need to raise there, okay, but what about the issues with powerlifting? Not everyone is at an unhealthy body fat, and that's also true. In fact, people make these confusions. They assume because they see the really heavyweight powerlifters that everyone who competes in powerlifting is carrying a ton of body fat, and that's simply not true. Again, how about Johnny Candido? I mean, famous YouTuber, fitness YouTuber, who competes at powerlifting at the world level. Does anyone look at Johnny Candido and think, man, that guy's fat? I doubt it. Maybe some anorexic dude, maybe some guys who have suffered from anorexia might. Most people aren't looking at him and thinking that. If you go look at a lot of the champions, the guys who do best in their weight classes, most of them, until you start getting up into the super heavyweights, the 275s, the 308 plus, most of them are at athletic body fats. And you know why? Because powerlifting has weight classes. It's about how much strength and maxes you have in a given weight class. Well, simple question, since we know a bigger muscle is a stronger muscle, if you have two guys up there, all other things being equal, they have similar techniques, similar talent, they weigh the same amount, but one of them has 10 pounds more muscle than the other, and the other has 10 pounds more fat than the other, and that's the biggest difference. Who's more likely to win? The guy with 10 pounds more muscle. So if you're carrying too much extra body fat, it's going to hurt you in your weight class. I mean, think about that. That should be common sense to most people. In a weight class, fat doesn't flex. Fat doesn't make you inherently stronger like muscle does. So if a guy is carrying too much body fat, he's not going to be the best in his weight class. It's going to hurt him. Now, and it's not to say that people need to be getting as ripped as possible. There are schools of thought on that, but I find in powerlifting, the schools of thought that the guys need to get ripped, talking down under 10% body fat, are generally high drug using classes. People will cite examples like Jamie Lewis, Dan Green, who do get well under 10% body fat for meets, and so then they end up having an insane body composition for their weight class. That gives them an inherent advantage. Jamie Lewis doing the 181, Dan Green holding the world record in the 242. Both of them set records while being under 10% body fat and being pretty ripped by most standards. But that's not healthy either. Doesn't mean that they're healthy with what they're doing. So we could look at it both directions. And again, their drug uses were pretty heavy for both of those guys. Because I do know coaches, and I have talked to people who knew their personal drug stacks when they set those records, and they were not what I would consider to be moderation or in the anything healthy. But, you know, they still did very well, and it's because of the body composition end. But again, that's another extreme. That is as much of an extreme as the guys who are getting really, really fat to compete in powerlifting. Most guys, particularly when drugs don't come into the mix or drugs are in moderation, are going to tend to do best when they're at a nice athletic body fat, somewhere in that maybe 10, 11% range bottom end, up to about 15%. That's your athletic range. In that range, they're going to have enough support, cushioning, everything else that their body's going to produce the hormones they need. Their testosterone levels are going to stay nice and stable. They're going to not feel depleted. They're going to have enough energy and food that they're going to recover from their training better. And that's the thing you need to realize. People who get too lean, they do suffer from recovery problems in training. They do have hormonal problems. And so those guys who stay in that range are going to have the right balance. And remember, starving yourself down may not be giving you enough calories to train ideally. It's not going to give you enough calories to do what you need to do athletically oftentimes. And so performance suffers even in training in the off season. So you generally find most of your powerlifters, particularly if they're going to be drug-free, in my experience, are in that about that 10% to about 15% range are the guys who tend to do best in their weight classes. Again, as long as drugs aren't in the mix. So again, this idea that powerlifting, everyone in powerlifting is really, really fat is it's a myth that people are getting from something they're seeing on the internet. It's not actually true. It's not actually how it works. It's a skewed reality. And we need to remember powerlifting is not being touted is some amazing fitness or healthy lifestyle, the same way that things like men's physique competitors and bodybuilding is. And again, you need to look no further than YouTube to see that. You see a lot of YouTubers who promote this stuff as fitness lifestyles. And it really isn't. And people need to learn to differentiate between the two. That these competitive endeavors and getting as ripped as people are getting is harmful to your health. It's not fitness. And conversely, by that same token, obviously, if you're eating double cheeseburgers every day and avoiding cardio because you think that's the best way to get strong for powerlifting, you're not living a healthy lifestyle either. But that being said, you need to remember, powerlifters vary greatly. Bodybuilding and men's physique and things like that require you to inherently get to an unhealthy body fat to be competitive. Powerlifting doesn't. And go back to the other point, when you get into anything with the really, really heavy weight classes, the guys who are actually winning are usually the guys in the healthy athletic range on their body fat. That 10 to 15% range tends to do best in their weight class in powerlifting most of the time, with there being exceptions obviously, but they tend to do better. They're usually at an inherent advantage in terms of body weight versus muscle mass, as well as keeping just enough body fat to stay hormonally balanced. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.